Welcome to the Savvy Dentist podcast with Dr. Jesse Green, the show where great dentistry meets great business. Listen in each week as we bring you an inspiring person who will share their story, ideas and business techniques to help you create a practice and a life you love. And now introducing your host, Dr. Jesse Green.
Hello everyone, it's Jesse Green here. Welcome back to SavvyDentist.com and to the Savvy Dentist podcast. It's great to have your company for another episode of the show. Now, for those people who are new to the program, welcome. It's great to have you here. And I want to take a moment to introduce you to a sister publication, which of course is the Savvy Dentist magazine. Now, we recently launched the Savvy Dentist magazine as the sister publication, as I said, and it's really designed to equip practice owners with the knowledge that they need to take their practice to the next level so they can grow and scale their practice. It's designed to give you the latest and greatest information to enhance your decision making, because we know that good decisions lead to good outcomes. And we know that if we can have the right information, the likelihood of a good decision is increased. So in the magazine, you're going to see some wonderful resources, whether we're talking about HR, marketing, IT, property, tax, wealth creation, fit outs, all those sorts of things, as well as articles following in the theme of Not Invented Here, which is, I guess, the whole ethos of this podcast. Is designed to look at what's happening in the broader business world and take those lessons and make them relevant to dentistry. So if you want to get a hold of the magazine, all you need to do is head across to savvydentist.com/magazine, grab yourself a copy. You'll need to subscribe. So if you want to get the print copy, you can get that. We'll post it to you. If you want to get the digital copy, that'll be delivered to you via email, of course. So grab a copy of that. It's totally free. There's nothing to pay, and we hope that helps you in your practice ownership journey. Now, what I want to talk to you about today is some lessons that came out of a recent field trip that our boardroom clients and I took to the United States. So we decided to go traveling to the United States to look at other businesses. Now, I've been looking at other businesses, as I said, for decades. I've long held the view that what happens in other businesses is directly relevant to what we can do in our business, and the best ideas often come from outside the industry. I really believe that the market has evolved and the needs of today's practice owner are far more sophisticated than traditional practice management paradigms. So if you're a business owner today it's 2023 as we're recording this, if you're a practice owner and you're doing practice management from 2015, 2016, 2010, all of that stuff is outdated. The market has moved on. And so as business owners, we need to be constantly educating ourselves. We need to be constantly at the forefront of things. So for however long I can remember, I've always gone out to the market to look at other ideas. And I've wanted to explore new frontiers, push boundaries, see what's working, see what's not, see what's relevant, see what's not, and incorporate that into our own practice. And then once we've incorporated it into our practice, I then share it with our clients. So on this trip, we went to 3 locations. We went firstly to Disney in Anaheim in California. We went to the park there. Obviously, we experienced Disney and all the magic that is Disney. But then we went to Disney Institute so we could look behind the curtain and see how they do what they do. We could understand the leadership strategies, the leadership secrets that they have to allow their cast members to perform and deliver that magic to every single person on a consistent basis. Once we left Anaheim, we went up to Seattle, and Seattle's a great town. I'd never been there before. I loved Seattle, actually, so much to see, so much to do. But we went there specifically to have a look at the Pike Place markets, and in particular, the fish market there, which made the whole fish philosophy really famous. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about that in a bit. And the third stop was to Las Vegas, where we went to see Zappos. And Zappos is a company I've been fascinated with for at least over a decade, probably 2012, 2011, something like that. And what I thought I'd do is I'd record a series of podcasts to share some of the insights that came about as a result of that field trip. And I hope that some of these lessons are helpful for you as you go about your business. So you can take some of these ideas, put your own spin on them, and introduce them to your own practice. It's about adapting rather than adopting. It's about not copying necessarily exactly what one of these businesses might do, although you can if you want to. But what I'm hoping is that this will stimulate thought, it'll stimulate reflection, it'll stimulate further reading perhaps, so that you can explore those things that are relevant to you and then take action upon them. And so what I wanted to do firstly was to start off with Zappos. So I'm going to go in reverse order. I'm going to go from Zappos to Seattle at the Pike Place, and then of course to Disney. So we'll do 3 episodes, one for each of them. And so in this episode, I really want to talk about Zappos. Now, Zappos is a company that I have been familiar with for well over a decade. A friend of mine's mum actually introduced me to Zappos, and she said, I know you're always curious about businesses, and I've come across this business that I think is really quirky, really interesting, but really inspiring at the same time. And that company is called Zappos. And most of you may have heard of Zappos, some of you will, some of you won't. But for those that don't know, Zappos is known for being an online shoe retailer, which doesn't sound particularly remarkable until you understand they have a really strong culture and their core values drive everything that they do. Now, if you've read Tony Hsieh's book called Delivering Happiness, you'll know the story of Zappos. But for those that have not read the book, firstly, I'd say please go and read it. But just to catch you up a little bit, I'll share just a couple of key points. Tony Hsieh had a business called Link Exchange, which he sold to Microsoft, many years ago for about $265 million, I believe. And what ended up happening is as that business was growing and scaling, they were hiring people so quickly that they lost control of their culture to the point that Tony, as the CEO and founder, hated going to work. And when he exited that business, he was happy to get out of there. And I believe he left a bit of money on the table as a result of exiting early because he was so unhappy. But he started an incubator called Venture Frogs where he would invest in up-and-coming companies as an angel investor. And he came across a guy called Nick Swinburne who had stumbled across the idea of selling shoes online, and he'd written a thesis about it and so on and so forth, and of course he had all the usual detractors saying no, it can't be done, mustn't be done, shouldn't be done, can't be done, whatever, right? And anyway, Tony Hsieh was not one of those. He saw the vision that Nick had, he understood the vision, and he backed him. And over time, Tony invested tons and tons and tons of his own money and ultimately became, the CEO of the company. And what he wanted to make sure of is that Zappos did not go the same way that Link Exchange went. And he wanted to make sure that he created a place that was happy to go to work and everyone was happy to go to work and they could do business on their terms. And so what ended up happening is Zappos became really well known for their culture. And I think this is a really important point because you think about culture and oftentimes you think, how does that scale? Well, it does scale if you have intentionality around it and you do everything in accordance with your culture. And so Zappos are fanatical about their culture. And I'd read about their culture, I'd read about their core values, and I'll share those with you in a second. But to see it, to feel it, to experience it was something different. It's like an atmosphere, the vibe. You can totally feel the vibe of the place. Everyone is singing from the same song sheet. Everyone embraces the culture. Those that don't like the culture would have left or never made it in the first place. And so as you walk around the campus in Las Vegas, you can see evidence of the culture everywhere. The interactions you have with the people, the placards on the wall, the pictures, the funny cutouts, the way that they've set up their meetings and so on and so forth. It's very in line with their culture. So Tony, when he decided to make culture a priority, he wanted to start with a guiding document. That guiding document is the core values. And so Zappos has 10 core values, and those 10 core values really are, firstly, to deliver wow through service. And that is incredibly important because Zappos see themselves first and foremost as a service business rather than a shoe seller. And so they see themselves as a customer service business who just happens to sell shoes, which means then they can sell anything that they like. But it's always about service. And I'll come back to this in a minute because it's really critical. They embrace and drive change is the second core value. Creating fun and a little weirdness is number 3. Be adventurous, creative, and open-minded is number 4. Pursue growth and learning is number 5. Build open and honest relationships with communication is core value number 6. Build a positive team and family spirit is core value number 7. Number 8 is do more with less. Number 9 is to be passionate and determined. And number 10 is being humble. And Tony Hsieh, when he sat and thought about these values, and obviously they consulted about these values before they just thrust them upon the workplace. These were developed by the whole team themselves. He wrote this memo that says, as we grow as a company, it's become more and more important to explicitly define the core values from which we develop our culture, our brand, and our business strategies. These are the 10 core values that we live by, and he went on to list them. So what's really important about that, I believe, is he began with a framework, he began with a foundation, and everything stems from that. If it doesn't fit in with their core values, then it doesn't fit in. And so, as I said, you could see and feel these core values in action as we went. And one of the things that I really want to talk about is how they see themselves as a customer service business first and foremost. Everything that they do is about serving their customers, serving their team, to the extent that they want to build personal, emotional connections with everyone with whom they interact. They want to make sure that every person they interact with leaves better for that interaction, whether that's a vendor, whether that's a customer, whether that's a team member, whatever it happens to be. And they're so serious about customer service that no matter who you are in the business, whether you're the CEO or the janitor, everyone does customer service training for a period of time before you go off into your core role. It's that important. And so that customer service training is that ethos goes through every single person, every single department in the whole organization. And once you've done that training, then of course you might go into the role that you're actually hired to perform. Of course, when it comes to core values, you might say, well, that's all really great for an itty-bitty business and that's wonderful. It's all touchy-feely, but what's it bring? You know, I'm a numbers guy. I want outcomes. And of course, we all want outcomes too. And so does Zappos. But Zappo's philosophy, and it's proven in their results, is that if you've got an aligned team, you have a productive team. And if you've got a productive team, the results will follow. And so making sure that everyone is moving in that same direction is really key. Now, of course, Zappos is known for its, having fun and a little weirdness, and you'll see that show up in the way that they meet things, the way they do their meetings and things. And so, for instance, the executives might have a meeting together in a boardroom, but equally they might have a meeting in a ball pit. So there's a pit in the foyer there, which is filled with plastic balls, and you can get in and have your meetings there. Now, why might you do that? Well, you might do it because it breaks the ice. It gets you out of that normal boardroom thought process. It allows you to be more creative. It allows you to kind of let the boundaries down, have a laugh, let the endorphins go, and hopefully have more constructive conversations. And so even after Amazon ended up acquiring Zappos, some of their executives will come and have meetings in the ball pit as well. And I'll talk to you about Amazon and the Zappos purchase in a minute. But it's really critical to understand that all these core values show up in different ways. And having these core values as a foundation that people hire and fire by is critical. So the way Zappos embody their culture, embody their core values is through the hiring process, the onboarding process, the training process, and their firing process. And so when they're hiring, as I said already, people must go through the customer service training. But what they're really testing for in their interview process is obviously for skills, right? They need people who are competent in their core role, but they're really looking for core value alignment. And they'll often ask questions that are designed to uncover someone's values. So we were greeted by Rio. And when we first went to the Zappos campus, there was a great big sign, welcome Savvy Dentist. It was great. And they had this box. It was like a desk that was shaped like a packing box. And we all gathered around and had photos in the packing box. And everyone welcomed us. It was fantastic. And we were greeted by Rio. And Rio plays a ukulele. He's from Hawaii originally, and he was telling us about his hiring process. When he was hired for Zappos, he was originally hired as a barista, and of course you can move laterally and upwardly within the organisation there. And so he's now in charge of giving tours. And so what Rio was saying, when he was going through his interview process, it took a long time. So they hire slowly and they fire quickly. It took about 3 months, I think it was, for the hiring process. And this is for a barista role, right? But what they wanted to make sure is that he would embody the culture. And so they'd ask him questions that seemed totally irrelevant to the core job. For instance, they asked him what his favourite curse word is. Now, of course, he's waiting for the cameras or, some sort of candid camera moment. But he said to them, look, I'm from Hawaii originally. If I'm going to curse, I'm going to curse in my native language. I'm perhaps not going to curse in English. So they asked him what the word was. And then, of course, there was a bit of cultural sharing around what it all meant and so on. And so what they really were trying to uncover is how truthful he'd be, how honest he'd be, rather than saying, I don't curse or whatever it happens to be. They wanted to understand his values. They wanted to understand who he is and get to know him. And so when we go through our interviewing process, if we're clear about our core values, we want to design questions that are perhaps a little bit left of center to reveal the character of the person sitting across the table from us. Because I don't know about you guys, but I've conducted loads of interviews over the years, and people often tell you the things that they think you want to hear, and it's easy to be swept up in that. And sometimes we find ourselves hiring people and going, oh, this is not what I thought it was. And so take your time to hire. Make sure they're a culture fit for you. Make sure you've articulated your values in the first instance and what they mean, but then hire according to that and have your onboarding process set up around that as well. But what's really interesting in the Zappos hiring process is they have this thing called the offer. So once people go through their hiring process and they're onboarded and so on, they're given the opportunity to leave, but to leave with money. So people are paid to leave. And I think it's about $5,000 or something. And the reason they do that is it's not a weird thing or anything like that. They're basically saying, we're so protective of our culture. We only want people who feel they can really embody and embrace this culture. We know it's not for everyone. And some people will self-identify in that onboarding process that actually, you know what, this is not what I thought it was. And so what Zappos want to do is to give those people an opportunity to leave with dignity and with a bit of money in their pocket so they can pay their rent, pay their utilities and so on, and move on to other opportunities that are going to be more suitable. So it's about letting them go with dignity, letting them go with a bit of money in their pocket so they can move on to other things. And so I think what's really important to understand, coming back to Zappos, is this concept of it being a customer service company. And each of those customer service reps are empowered to solve problems, to do what's in the interest of the customer, to do what's in the interest of the business, to solve a problem. They want to make sure that each of their customers leave happy. And sometimes, Rio was telling us that from time to time, the reps might not have the shoes that this particular person needs in a particular time frame. So they'll organise for the shoes to be delivered from a competitor store back to that same customer. Zappos makes nothing from it other than helping out that customer. On other occasions, Zappos have had customer care calls that have gone for 9 or 10 hours because they've built this personal, emotional connection. Now, that doesn't happen every single day. But where does this become relevant for us in dentistry? How do we see ourselves? Are we a customer service business that just happens to do dentistry, or are we something else? It doesn't really matter what we are as long as we're clear about it and as long as we see ourselves truthfully in the mirror for what we're doing. Most people see themselves as clinicians, and that's fine, but there's more to it than us. We want to create that connection, that personal, emotional connection with each of our patients. Because as Brené Brown, the social researcher, who I'm on the record as saying I have an intellectual crush on. I have to use the word intellectual because it sounds a bit weird otherwise. But Brené Brown goes so far as to say, connection is what gives meaning and purpose to human life. And I strongly believe that those practices that build personal connections with their patients, those personal emotional connections, build a relationship. And it's the relationship that allows people to come into the practice, to stay in the practice, to ultimately accept the care that we know that they need, and to do that really well. But also, if you're going to create employees that stay for a long time, you want to make sure that they share that culture, that vision. When we walked around the Zappos campus, we ran into lots of different groups of people, and some of them would stop and talk to us and would ask them how long they'd been there, and it was like 12 years, 13 years, 15 years, whatever it is, a long, long time. And they're all there because they buy into the culture. Now, they're probably being paid, well, but probably not top dollar. So it's not the money that keeps them there. It's something else. And that glue, that culture is what keeps them there. So if you want to have a productive practice, you want to minimize your employee turnover. You want to minimize having to onboard and train and going through that cycle. And to minimize that, you want to retain your best people. To retain your best people is about building a culture that people can buy into, that they love. Yes, they've got to be paid well, but they also stay for more than just the money. And if you do that, you're going to have productive employees, long-term employees, and the results will follow. I also need to let you know that Zappos is a hardcore company. Yes, they have metrics. Yes, they have KPIs. Yes, they turn over a lot of money. They did something like $900 million of revenue. They were acquired by Amazon in 2009 for over $1 billion. And so Amazon and Zappos have been able to coexist and maintain this culture and maintain results, because obviously results matter. And Zappos would not have been acquired by Amazon if the results weren't there. Amazon have let Zappos continue in the way that they have always operated, because they understand it's the culture that drives the results. And Amazon, the big behemoth that it is, tries not to come in and be the corporate overlord. They let Zappos do what they do because they don't want to interfere with a good thing. So there's lots of lessons there. And if you've not read the book by Tony Hsieh called Delivering Happiness, firstly, I'd encourage you to go and read it. It's a terrific book. And secondly, if you've not read The Power of Wow, grab that too, because that's written by the employees. It's in their own words, and it lets you know what's important to them. And there'll be some insights and some ideas and some inspiration that come out of that you might be able to adapt for your own practice. I'm not saying build a ball pit in your practice. I'm not saying have a pinball machine in your foyer. I'm not saying any of that stuff might be relevant to you, but I am saying be deliberate about your culture. Create it with intent. Hire by it, fire by it, live it, breathe it, because when you have that, you'll feel it. And when you feel it, you'll create the right atmosphere for the right people to come into your practice to stay, whether that be patients, whether that be team, and you'll have a lot more enjoyment at work as well. So I hope you find that helpful. In our next episode, I'm going to be talking about the Pike Place markets, specifically about the fish market, but the markets in general, and some of the amazing things that they've done there. It's an incredible sight to behold. And again, some clever strategies there that relate to business as well. So we'll tune into that at the next episode. Bye for now.
Thank you for listening to the Savvy Dentist podcast. For more episodes, go to drjessiegreen.com/savvydentist. And to discover how to build a high-performance dental practice, visit drjessiegreen.com and download the free report.